Despite the profound loss of his mother, Timothy clung to the belief that he had to keep pushing forward. It was what she would have wanted for him, a resilient young man who refused to surrender at the first hint of failure. Each day, he reminded himself to fight on, understanding that there would be moments when his tears would mingle with the sand beneath his feet. Yet, like many others, he was unprepared for that particular day, a day marked by fleeting memories and a past that felt distorted, as if viewed through a different lens. As he set out on his long, seemingly endless walk, he felt an undeniable pull towards the deli where he had once poured his heart into his work, compelled by the need to collect his long-awaited final paycheck. With a deep, steadying breath, he pushed open the glass door, which swung inward with a gentle creak, the familiar sound of a brass bell ringing softly to announce his arrival. Instantly, he was enveloped by the inviting aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the rich scent of baked goods, a warm embrace that ignited a cascade of nostalgia. He meandered over to the register, his steps leading him to a spot where he recognized Grace, a woman whose luminous smile had the power to brighten even the gloomiest of days. Grace was engaged in her usual routine, expertly pouring a steaming cup of coffee for an elderly gentleman, her movements fluid and practiced, reminiscent of a dancer in a well-rehearsed performance. Her name, a gift from her parents, embodied her intrinsic kindness and unwavering honesty. Yet, as time passed, the vibrant spark in her eyes held stories of transformation. Grace had evolved from the cheerful barista he once knew into a formidable businesswoman, a journey marked by ambition and a desire for success that revealed the intricate layers of her personality. There was an undeniable duality to her existence. She donned a polished mask of self-assuredness and elegance, skills honed and perfected through years of hard work. Yet beneath that refined surface lay a tumultuous inner struggle, wrestling with the conflict between her true self and the crafted identity she presented to the bustling world around her. This Gemini-like dichotomy left her spiraling in an internal whirlwind, caught in the tension between authenticity and expectation, never fully able to unite the two disparate sides of her soul. Timothy offered Grace a gentle smile, their eyes locking in a brief moment of connection. However, her expression slowly shifted, the corners of her mouth faltering as a sigh escaped her lips. It was evident that her heart wasn't warm with joy at his presence. The last time they had crossed paths, she had firmly declared that he was not welcome to return to the store. To her, Timothy was an unwanted harbinger of chaos, bringing along misfortunes akin to bad omens and memories of her own troubled relationship with alcohol. With a dismissive wave, she beckoned him to follow her to the back room, where they stored all the supplies. As she walked, Timothy couldn't help but notice the way her brow furrowed, as if it were inching toward the heavens, ready to issue a firm no to whatever it was he intended to ask. Finally, their gazes locked again, and he spoke, his voice laced with a mix of hope and frustration. "You said you were going to pay me my last check," he reminded her, his expression softening just slightly. Grace glared back at him, her eyes flaring with an energy that seemed to transform her, revealing a fiercer side that Timothy had seen before. She sauntered away, smacking her gum audibly, a clear sign of her impatience. When she returned to him, her hand, poised as if on the brink of battle, brandished a single bill, $100. As she counted it out methodically, each $20 bill was a sluggish reminder of his crushed expectations. With a flick of her wrist, she slapped the meager payment into his palm. Timothy stared down at the money in disbelief. "Timothy, what is this? You owe me way more than this," he protested, feeling the sting of indignation build. "Oh, do I?" Grace retorted, crossing her arms defiantly, her tone laced with condescension. "All you did was clean a few dishes and lounge around for the rest of your shift." Frustrated, Timothy flung the $100 onto the floor, his fists clenching tightly, his body taut with suppressed rage. "You know you owe me more than this, Grace," he insisted, trying to maintain his composure. With a dismissive wave of her hand, Grace turned and made her way toward the door, signaling for him to leave. Timothy stormed out of the restaurant, the glass door cracking sharply against the wall as he slammed it behind him, the noise echoing in his ears. Trudging down the street, his thoughts spiraled as he worried about how he would make rent. The burden of his struggles felt almost insurmountable, like heavy chains pulling him deeper into despair. Yet he longed for something better, desperately fighting against the tide of hopelessness threatening to drown him. He found a splintered wooden bench. Timothy sank onto it, observing a flock of pigeons nearby, gathered in a chaotic yet strangely organized fashion like a ragged army. They worked in unison, utilizing every scrap of food they could find to forge a semblance of community, something he craved and admired deeply. He identified with the pigeons, feeling both their grace and their fractures. They seemed to embody all that he wished for and feared. One particular pigeon, adorned in a striking mix of white and brown feathers, landed atop a nearby building, its presence strangely soothing. It looked directly at him as if calling his name, beckoning him to reflect on his own choices. Timothy's gaze drifted downward beneath the bird, his thoughts spiraling into darker territories of borrowed money and survival. Shaking off the temptation, he wrapped his arms around his knees, feeling cold and vulnerable. He didn't want to revisit those familiar, welcoming doors again. He didn't want to be that guy, the one who found himself trapped in the spiral of need and failure. But, weighed down by necessity, he steeled himself, rising from the bench with reluctance. With a deep breath, he crossed the street, his heart racing as he approached the building once more, knocking on the door with a sense of dread looming overhead. Peering through the window, he found the place wholly deserted, a hollow shell of the bustling restaurant it should have been. A flickering light in the distance caught his eye, revealing a shadowy figure inside, a sight that sent shivers down his spine. Disturbed, he took a step back, absorbing the weight of the day. There seemed to be no clear path forward. It was time to loosen his grip on the fraying rope he had been desperately clutching. As raindrops began to fall from the sky, their rhythm matched his heavy steps. To Timothy, it felt as if the heavens were weeping, a reflection of his own sorrow. The cloud-filled sky dimmed with an oppressive grey, wrapping around him like an aging shroud. Sitting again in a nearby park, he could feel that the sun had completely slipped behind the clouds, leaving only darkness above. People walked by, their faces blurred and lost, similarly focused on a red car parked nearby, which had been watching him sit there for too long. His heart knew he didn't truly want to end things. He wanted life to unfold as it was meant to, but the weight of existence felt heavier than the weight of death. It was hard to breathe beneath the judgment that loomed over him as if fate had already decided his future, and he could only watch helplessly as it all slipped away. A woman burst from the towering edifice, rain pouring down in relentless sheets that soaked her clothes and dripped from her hair. She shielded her head with a worn paperback, the cover slightly crinkled from her grip, desperately trying to reach her red sedan that had been sitting there, neglected, for hours. Just above her, the imposing structure loomed, one of New York's iconic giants, known as Paradox Geo. This corporation was at the forefront of innovations, ambitiously pushing the boundaries of science in areas like hygiene, virology, and the curious pursuit of creating superhumans. It felt surreal, yet poetic, that he considered it an ideal place to take his last breath. The architecture of the building was mesmerizing, adorned with intricate moldings and grand windows that sparkled like jewels in the dim light. A magnificent diamond chandelier hung above, catching the ambient light and casting glimmers across the pristine marble flooring. He pulled himself up from the rain-soaked branch where he had been huddled, his clothes soaked. Shivering slightly, he began to move with urgency, shoving his hands into his pockets as he lowered his gaze, crossing the slick street. He slipped through the heavy glass door, and as he stepped inside, he looked up to take it all in. The lobby was a marvel, buzzing with the energy of some of the brightest minds in the building. As he inhaled, the air felt thick with ambition and innovation, pressing down on him like a weight. He made his way toward the elevator, glancing left and right as employees hurried past, their faces set in determination, completely oblivious to his presence. Even the security guard seemed unfazed as he boldly strolled by. The only trace he left behind were the wet shoe prints staining the marble floor. He halted before the elevator and pressed the opulent golden button, which lit up with a cheerful chime. Bing! The doors slid open, revealing a beautifully crafted interior of rich, dark wood. Stepping inside, he felt a momentary thrill as the elevator whirred upward, each floor number ticking by, 1, 2, 3, and 4, until it halted at 5. With a surge of confidence, a man walked inside, holding his head high. He pressed the button for the 16th floor while chatting animatedly on his phone. It was Luke Paradox, the self-proclaimed billionaire playboy notorious for living off his father's vast wealth. Gordon Paradox, founder and CEO of this behemoth, had set a high bar, and it was clear that Luke's hands were uncalloused. He had never toiled a day in his life. His voice dripped with a superficial depth as if he were putting on a performance to impress someone, likely his father. From a young age, Luke had yearned for approval, attempting to gain his father's affection that always seemed to elude him. Crushed beneath the success and acclaim of his two older brothers, Alex and John, who were dazzling in their own rights, Luke's longing intensified. He was an undeniable outsider, with pale white hair that contrasted sharply against his siblings' darker locks, a constant reminder of his father's hesitance to fully accept him. But for now, this day was not about Luke. As he stepped off the elevator onto the 16th floor, Timothy began to grapple with the reality of his choices. The elevator doors slid closed and took him all the up, then opened with a gentle ding, revealing a dimly lit corridor, highlighted by a stark red exit sign that illuminated the way. Timothy cautiously edged out, his heart pounding as he focused intently on the red glow. He approached the door at the end of the hallway, the low rumble of thunder echoing ominously outside, punctuated by the harsh patter of rain against the pavement. With a trembling hand, he flung the door open wide and took a hesitant step forward, the knot in his throat tightening ominously as he stood poised on the edge of the ledge, uncertainty swirling in his mind. As he stood on the edge, a flood of thoughts washed over him one last time. The ache in his heart deepened as he yearned to reunite with his mother in whatever lay beyond. He wished he could express his remorse for not fully grasping the challenges she faced as a young woman trying to raise a boy into a man. He clung to the hope that there was indeed another realm waiting for him and not just an endless abyss, like the shadows that clouded his mind. He silently prayed that when his time came, he would escape the relentless cycle of suffering that seemed to chase him, burdening him like a weight on his shoulders. A solitary tear streamed down his cheek, its warmth harsh against the chill of the downpour. The gusts of wind whipped around him, merging with the rain that relentlessly pelted his skin, each droplet amplifying his sense of despair. He took a deep breath, feeling the tumultuous energy of the world as he stepped forward, ready to embrace the release he sought. It felt almost euphoric, as if he were finally about to find solace. With his eyes gently closing, surrendering to the comforting darkness, a sudden flash of lightning illuminated the stormy sky. It was a blinding arc of electric energy that shot down fiercely as if the heavens themselves were intervening. In an instant, a vibrant green fabric unfurled from the bolt, spiraling toward him and wrapping around his body like a powerful, resolute force. It was as though he were in a fierce struggle, confronting God himself, caught between the desire for liberation and an unexpected tether, battling against unseen hands that refused to let him go. He yanked, trying to free himself, desperately attempting to disentangle from the filthy fabric that had ensnared his face, constricting like a vice. The cloth, worn and tattered, clung to his skin, its rough texture scratching against his features and making it hard to breathe. Each movement felt like a battle against the suffocating grip, as he fought to reclaim his sense of dignity and air. The scent of sweat and despair permeated the fabric, intensifying his struggle as he struggled to push it away, seeking light and clarity beyond the darkness that enveloped him. Bang! The end, devilish sound of police, sirens, and car alarms going off as the green cloth turns slowly into a God-fearing red as people stop, their cars all seeing Timothy completely smashed against the sidewalk, and no longer grabbing life and death. So he thought.